Hi, my name is Marla Franklin. I'm the manager of learning and development at BrightStar Care Corporation, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Mike Inman, who he started in engineering and worked his way up into sales and was a buyer, manager, director, and VP by the age of 35. And today he works at Tableforce. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Marla, thank you for having me.
So excited to have you.
Yeah.
So today's conversation, we're going to talk about personal brand and career development. You know, when we hear the word personal brand, there's so many definitions, but what comes to mind for you when you hear that word? What's the definition in your head?
First of all, it's the first impression that we make with each other. And everybody has this thing they call cognitive bias. You see somebody in your summation of your experiences with people who look like that, sound like that, talk like that. So it's out there, and this is the voice inside of our head that's saying this is what people are probably going to think of me. So hopefully they think highly, and I think everybody should care about their brand. I know it's easy in this Zoom world that we're in our jammies, where some people don't get dressed from the waist down. But we should care because I think when we care about our personal brand, it builds our own confidence. And and there isn't a job that I've had that didn't require some level of confidence. And confident people tend to do better at negotiations and in life. So even if it's, brushing your teeth, making your bed in the morning, whatever it is, that becomes a part of your personal brand. It can be little stuff. Um, the pucks on the wall here, $2 a piece on Amazon, and they helped make the sound better and the acoustics. And I feel better that I've made the small investment in making sure that someone on the other side of the screen has a better experience. And I'm more confident because of that. So that personal
Yeah,
brand, it's a lot of things, but it's the first reaction and it's the confidence. I guess are the two things to sum up is what personal brand means to me.
absolutely. No, that's a good summary. I mean, you hear um, dress to impress and dress for the job that you want, not that the job you have. So it's all those things play into it. And I'm sure that your personal brand has evolved. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that your personal brand when you were 20 is probably not the same personal brand now.
Yeah, I'll just put this out there. I tell people when I was in my early years, I should have been dead or in jail a lot of times, and now I'm boring. And that's okay. I'm very, very happy with that evolution. I do want to touch on one thing you said about personal brand. There's this phrase out there, fake it until you make it. And I do believe that people see right through that. I any stories that I tell, any suggestions I give, I want people to take away that it worked for me or didn't, because I have a lot of failures in my life that I like to share. And it's gotta be they have to be authentic in their application of that lesson. You can't be me. You got to be the best you can be while you're applying that tip or technique or tool or experience, whatever it may be. So yeah, I have definitely evolved over the years to a little more reserved, a little more thoughtful. Try to work harder, not or work smarter, not harder. Um, that'd be my take on that particular topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so it's evolved is what I'm hearing, but
Yep,
what I guess what's a mistake maybe that you made early on um
sure.
that relates to it?
The most recent one that jumps out is when I learned to be a trainer with Table Force. I went from head of purchasing. I've been through a lot of training myself. Made training available to my teams, and so I saw a lot of trainers over the years. And the people who owned Table Force at the time brought me on board and were going to teach me how to train. And I had watched them several times, and they made it look really, really easy, really smooth people. And I said to myself, I can do that. That's easy. I can get up and tell stories. I got that. And my first time out of the gate, I was horrible because I didn't take it seriously enough. And I told stories on the wrong topic, the wrong page at the wrong time. Some went way too long, some weren't in depth enough. And so I started studying how they did it. And it turns out they're like ducks. On the water, they're cool. and underneath the water, they're paddling like mad. And they had really scripted out all of their stories and done things strategically. They seemed like they were just kind of going along and would drop stories or drop tools and techniques at different times. And it turns out it was very, very strategic. So as I watched our two owners at the time, Bill Garcia and Mark Kensick, I started saying, okay, this is Bill did this and it really resonated with the crowd really well. And Mark did this and it really resonated really well. And on each page of a 40-page book, I was picking out when to be Bill and when to be Mark. And that was horrible too. Now,
No.
the good that came out of it was I went through a process of really refining my stories and techniques, but I was trying to imitate Bill and back to the fake it till you make it. It didn't come across well. And when I was trying to be Mark, I was an imitation of Mark. And these two are very highly skilled, highly accomplished people. So I had a meeting with them and I said, guys, listen, you guys have given me all the knowledge and skills and abilities that I need to be successful, but I just want to tell you this right now. I can't be either one of you. There was a little internal fighting. They both wanted to influence how I did things, on what page I would
Hmm.
tell stories. And I just said, guys, I got to stop you. I need to be the best Mike that Mike can be. And from that point forward, that's when I started to get much better reviews. We have anonymous reviews at the end of every class. So I get to see what 24 to 50 people thought of me without their name being on it. And some of them were brutal in the early stages. But when I started to just be the best Mike I could be,
Hmm.
that's when I started to take off in my career and get much better ratings and reviews. So that would be my mistake, was trying to imitate somebody else, even though they're great at what they do. You got to take the best of what other people do and apply it to you in your way.
Absolutely. And that's not uncommon. I would say myself being in learning and development too, I tried to mirror others that I saw that were either excellent presenters or very concise or were great storytellers. And my pitch didn't come off nearly as well when I tried to imitate.
Do you
But when I
attribute
would,
that to a confidence level that you knew you were copying someone else, or do you attribute it to, I've fed you an answer that
yeah,
came to my mind, but what do you attribute that to?
I think it was. I thought that what they did was perfect, and I wanted to do a perfect job. But you can't. You're to your point. You're never going to be that person. That was perfect for them, and there was
Right.
aspects of it that I should have taken as learning ideas or just strategies. But I like to insert humor where appropriate, and I probably use more humor than maybe the average trainer does. So, but
Sure.
I like to do that, and it works for me. It helps build rapport. It keeps the class moving. Um, and so it just, and I'm also I'm not as good with, some people are really good at memorizing quotes and saying phrases, and I was trying to
Yep.
do that, and then I would get it wrong. And so it just was because it wasn't me,
Sure.
you
And
know.
sometimes it's a story. There's a story about Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile, and I tell a story about Maurice Green and Usain Bolt, and the concepts in the stories are the same, but other people are really more comfortable telling this Roger Bannister story, and it's powerful. In my brain, it's a story from a long time ago that may not resonate with a younger crowd. So I try to pull a story that's not as well known, but it might resonate a little more. But I'm trying to be the best me that I could be when I'm doing that.
Yeah, no. Um, no, those insights are extremely helpful. So that was you seeking out some advice on personal brand. I would say, what's some feedback that you've been given? Maybe you weren't seeking it and you were given it. And what was that?
Okay, so a specific example, I had just taken a new job, and I was working with C-level people, which I'd worked with before, but these were a new batch of C-level people. And I took some of the lessons from the other people that I had worked with and clearly these people will have the same profile, right? And we were in
Mhm.
this meeting. The meeting went a little long, and one of the Heidi Seeley, the senior vice president at MGM, she had to leave the meeting, but I needed some information from Heidi. So as she excused herself to leave, I said, Heidi, I know you have to run. Do you mind if I walk to your car with you and talk to you about a couple things that I need from you? And she said, sure, no problem. And we walked to her car and she got in her car and she gave me the answers I needed. She was very polite, professional. And I came back to the office the next day and my boss called me in and and she said, Mike, I need to talk to you about what happened with Heidi yesterday. And he said, oh, what happened with Heidi yesterday? Did she get in an accident or something? And she said, no, you accosted her on her way out the door. And I the word accosted is such a strong word. And I felt so bad that the perception was that I had accosted someone. And really, I was trying to be respectful. I was trying to get things done. I was trying to make use of her time to walk to the car, and I'm thinking, hey, we're all busy here. So that 1 minute walk could give me some information. And by the way, as a senior vice president, pretty confident person, could have said, no, Mike, I'm already on to the next thing, or I have to make a phone call on the way. They could have said, no, I can't talk to you right now. Call me later. Call me tomorrow. Get on my calendar. There's a bazillion things they could have done. But my boss gave me that feedback. And I, when your boss gives you feedback like that, you have to internalize it. And I said, okay, how do I do this better? So from that point forward, I no longer ask Heidi if I could walk to her car with her when she left meetings. I would send an email saying, can I get on your calendar? When was convenient for you? Went over the top to be, really sensitive to the fact that either Heidi told Teresa that she didn't appreciate it, or Teresa perceived that Heidi might not appreciate it. Didn't really matter. I had I had hurt somebody,
Yeah.
and maybe it's their cognitive bias, their background, but something that I did hurt somebody. My intention is never to hurt somebody. Now I am try to be direct. I try to be friendly. I try to attack issues that come up so we don't have them suffer long term. But I don't want to hurt people, and I did in that moment. So I took that feedback and I changed my behavior. I still needed information, but how I got that information, I was sensitive to. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, one follow-up though, did your manager give you some ideas or your leader give you some ideas, on how to approach it or that sort
Not
of
in that moment, and
not in that
and this
moment?
was later in my career. Um, so I don't want to. They did give me coaching on other things. They used to like to Teresa. And I don't know if she did this on purpose or if it was just a coincidence, but she used to would take contracts and things that I would write up, plans, presentations, and she would mark them up in a red pen, and it really took you back to like the high school days kind of a thing. This is wrong and you got a 42 out of 100 type of thing. and
Right.
and the whole team, it wasn't just me. It was her style, that we had to get used to, that type of feedback. And it's hard as an adult to get that when that red pen comes out and you see things marked up wrong. And I'm sure Teresa just thought that's the easiest way to make sure that it doesn't blend in. It pops out, and I want this fixed, so I want you to fix it. So she was being direct in her own way on that. I did have a boss one time who there's a concept of we shouldn't say we're sorry so often.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and I would agree, if we're not really sorry, we shouldn't say it. And people probably say it when they have nothing to be sorry for. And then I'll give you an exception. So when I worked at MGM, uh, corporate office, there were several corporate buildings, but the Bellagio was where all the C people had their offices in the back of the Bellagio, which, by the way, great corporate offices. They have Picasso's in the waiting room, like that you
Nice.
can just there. So I they two and there's a private parking area for the C-level executives, and then in the private area there is a extra private CEO parking space that has a turnstile for the CEO's car. This was
My
Steve Wynn built it
my
that way.
Picasso is, being redone.
Got it. Got it. So so if you go to the front of the Bellagio, you have to drive down the strip, you have to park, and it's an extra 30 minutes for you to get to the back of the Bellagio. So I had a habit of parking in the back, and there's a trash bin back there. And I'm not in the security gate where the C-level people park, but I'm parking by the trash bin. And a note came out to everybody: no longer can anyone park in the C-level spot, in C-level place. And And my brain said, well, this clearly doesn't apply to me. I don't park there, but I have a lot of meetings there, and I'll just continue to park in by the trash bin. So I went to a meeting, and to get in though, you do have to buzz yourself in through the gate. You don't park there, but you got to go through the gate where the parking lot is to then get to the executive door. So I did that, and my boss called me and he said, "What did you do?" And I said, "What do you mean? What did I do?" He goes, "Were you just at the Bellagio?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Where'd you park?" I said, I parked by the trash bin in the back." He goes, "Why did I get a note saying to remind everybody not to park in the executive lot?" And I said, "I didn't park in the executive lot. I parked by the trash bin." And he said, "You're just trying to get around the rule." I said, "I am trying to get around the rule because it's a stupid rule. I get that there's not enough parking places, but I don't have 30 minutes on front end and back end to go to a 20-minute meeting." So he said, "Okay, that makes sense. Apologize." And I said, "For what?" And he goes, "Just send a note saying you're sorry." And I said, "I don't want to send a note saying I'm sorry. I'm not sorry." He goes, "Mike, I want you to send an apology note." He smiled at me. He was nice. Jeremy Buck's the guy's name. And I said, "Fine." So I went back and I didn't type an aggressive, passive aggressive note. I just said, "Hey, listen, I'm really sorry. I must have misunderstood what the instructions were. I'm sorry for parking in the back by the trash can." Now, here's where I thought it got interesting. Instead of and don't do it again, or and I should have been more clear in my note, I got a note back from the admin saying, "Oh, Mike, we were talking about you. You can absolutely go ahead and park by the trash bin. It's the other people who are trying to break the rules and park in the executive lot." And my relationship with all those admin actually kind of improved. There were more smiles, there was more interaction after I apologized for something I didn't do. So there's some time I got some very direct feedback from a boss on how they wanted
You
it
to
done,
respond, yeah,
and it ended up working for me in that particular case.
in that example, yeah. I mean, feedback, so we've talked about this before, you and I, but so I want your opinion on this. There's a phrase, feedback is a gift. Do you love it or hate it?
I don't hate it. I'm a guy who, if I have spinach on my teeth, I want someone to say, "Hey, Mike, you got spinach on your teeth." Now that doesn't mean they have to go, "Ha ha, Mike's got spinach on his teeth." But please, if I'm making a mistake, I pride myself. I try to never make the same mistake twice. So if I'm making a mistake, if I'm unaware, I might make the same mistake twice. So I actually, when someone gives me feedback where I need to improve, I actually consider them part of my inner circle. They trust me enough that I'm tough enough that I can handle their feedback.
Yeah,
Now I may not agree with it, but I at least like it. So I think a lot of, and I've been accused of being defensive when someone's giving me feedback. Now, I like to think the voice in my head says I'm explaining my rationale. As an engineer, and I'm an overthinker, I want to have a reason for why I do things. So if somebody says, "Well, I don't like the way you did something," I might say, "Well, this is why I did it," so that they would have a perspective to go, "Oh, you didn't just make a mistake. You actually thought through that. Well, I still don't like it, but it wasn't an accident. It was thoughtful." So I want them to know that, and then we can have a discussion. And maybe they say, "Well, I think you're off on your reasoning," and I'm perfectly willing to have those discussions. But at the end of the day, I want to have that feedback so things don't fester. Because I think that's corporately where things really go sideways. Is when people go, "I don't like that. I hate when they do that. It really bothers me." And they go from a level one problem to a level 11 problem. And now HR has to be called in because people can't get along. Let's address these things earlier is my perspective. And it's little stuff. Mark
it's great,
Stolarz,
but do you think you had that perspective when you were right out of college, or do you think that's something that you learned? So I hate the phrase. I can say hate. I know it's strong,
okay,
but I cringe when I hear feedback as a gift. I know it is a gift. Like intuitively, I know it.
yeah.
But in my mind, I'm always thinking, well, others might not feel that it's a gift.
But
They might not appreciate it.
yeah.
They might not be receptive to hearing it at the time. They might, it's their choice, right? Because feedback is your choice to do with it what you want to do. So if you want to do something as a recipient of that feedback, you can. And if you choose not to, I mean, that's your personal choice.
Mhm.
Um, I prefer feedback is fuel to make you better. It just that's
Sure,
how
whether
I
it's
phrase it.
carbs fuel or gasoline fuel or, any type of fuel.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that is absolutely a better way of phrasing it up. And it's the giver's responsibility if they know enough to figure out, does this person need some carbs, or do they need some gas, or do they need some water? What's their fuel? How do I give that fuel? And it's
correct.
the receiver's responsibility. If they don't like the way the feedback is given, they need to say, hey, listen, could you put that in an email? Do we really have to talk about? Some people don't like to talk in person. Some people really like to use email. I'll use the word hide behind it. I think that sounds negative, but some people, they want to get the email. They want to. Here's one thing I learned about HR. We were going to lay some people off, and we had personality tests done before the layoff. And I said, "Wait, you're out of your mind. You know how much personality tests cost? If we're laying people off, we could save a couple of jobs if we didn't do these tests." And they said, "No, Mike, we need to do these tests so we know how to lay people off." And I said, "You're crazy. Here's what we're going to do." This was younger Mike. We're going to set up meetings with the people laid off, starting at 9 o'clock. And by 10 o'clock, we're going to be done with these horrible phone calls so we can get on with the rest of the day. And they said, "No, Mike, that's not what we're going to do." He said, "Mike, there are some people who want direct conversations." I think I'd mentioned that how horrible it is. The first person who gets fired, everybody at the company is going to know. And to
Yep.
make someone sit all day in their chair knowing there's that meeting with their boss that they're going to get fired is horrible. That's torture. They said, "No, Mike, you think it's torture." Some people need time to simmer down. Some people need time to go online and research top 10 questions to ask when you've been laid off. They need to get their plan together. And then they can talk at the end of the day and receive that bad news. And then there's other people just like you who want to rip that band-aid off. So we want to know what type of personality people are. So when we lay them off, we can handle it in the most appropriate way for them. And I learned something in that moment. That's about the platinum rule. Unfortunately, we don't always wear NASCAR like symbols around. We don't always know what people are going to perceive as kind and what people aren't. So,
So
so
can
I
you
think there's some of
explain
that.
the platinum rule? Because I don't know that everyone knows what the platinum rule
Yeah,
is.
yeah. So the golden rule says we should treat people the way we want to be treated, and I think that's very powerful. And I think there's a lot of truth to it. But the platinum rule says we should treat people the way they want to be treated. Unfortunately, we don't know that a lot of times. We can take personality tests, but then there's always deviations within a personality test. I happen to score. I've probably taken 8 personality tests over the years, and I score balanced. No matter what type of quadrant system you want to use, I score balanced. And I actually had one trainer say, "Mike, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that you can work with a lot of different people. You can very easily jump from one quadrant to another. The bad news is you could be a psychopath." That's exactly, I don't like to think of myself that way, but apparently psychopaths have there's a high degree of
A
psychopaths
balance.
who actually have a quadrant, who are balanced, who test balanced because they've learned how to trick people into liking them.
That's
That's
funny.
awkward. But in any event, that's what the platinum rules. We treat people the way they want to be treated. So here's an example. Mark Stolarczyk, he was a peer at MGM, and Mark is a very methodical thinker, loves data, loves reports, and Mark follows the rules. And I'm not. I'm a little more of a maverick in that. I'll break rules thoughtfully. I'll weigh risks, and if the reward is worth it, I'll do it. And I'm also one of those really annoying people that wake up in the morning like before the sun comes up, and boop,
And
I'm
work
like a
out.
binary computer. No, I don't work. No, I should. I I can just go. I don't need coffee. I've woken up at 1 o'clock in the morning and by 1:30 had a session with somebody in New Zealand. Like I can just do that, and that's annoying to a lot of people. So with Mark, I'd come in, and I was a morning guy. I'd be there at 7. Mark would come in at 9, and he would stay later than I would. Um, but I'd start talking to Mark because not only was my annoying morning guy, but I've been working since 7, and he'd roll in at 9. And one day he looked at me and he said, "Can you please wait until I have my cup of coffee?" Now, I don't like to make the same mistake twice. So I went mental note, don't talk to Mark until after he's had coffee. And I just put that rule in place. And he'd see me without his coffee, and I'd wave. Didn't even open my mouth, didn't even say hi. Good morning. I went to an extreme on it, but
Yeah.
his platinum rule was he doesn't want to be bothered before he's had his coffee and can sit down and read his reports, and then he can pick up. He was more. I kind of wind down at the end of the day. He's probably a lot stronger at the end of the day. There's
ab-
different
yeah.
people, right? We're all different. And how can we put the round pegs in the round holes and square pegs in the square holes? And Mark was a round peg. So I treated him like a round peg from that point forward, but I didn't know that. He had to give me that stern feedback. Don't
No,
Can we please
absolutely.
wait till I have my coffee? Got it. My wife's the same way. I don't talk to her until she's had her coffee. She walks around the house. I have her coffee out. I put it on the counter, put a little cream, a little sugar. It sits there, and and I just wait for her to do her thing in the morning. And she takes her coffee. She has a sip of coffee, and she says, good coffee." And then I can start
And
talking.
then you know it's okay to
Then
proceed.
it's okay. Because if I start talking before she says that, it could be a bad day. That's all.
But it's those social it's those social cues. It's that, um, emotional intelligence that you're picking up on, to make those decisions, and
Yeah.
those adjustments to your behavior.
And one of your
Um,
earlier questions, you said, "What about young Mike?" Young Mike would have said, "Screw you. I'll do it the way I want to do it." You don't you just because you don't like it, that's a you problem, not a me problem. And I learned that yeah, you can have that approach, but you're definitely going to make a lot more enemies with that type of approach. So why can't we all just get along and try? We're not always going to be successful, but try to work with each other.
I don't know, absolutely. It's about finding the balance of communication and, how to work with people, and it's tough. It's
Right.
tough, and you in your role, um, in all your roles, you've had to have some very direct conversations. Um, so what are some, I guess, techniques or what's your approach in having some of those more direct conversations? What's your style and how do you do it?
I'm gonna take a side door on this one. It's situational, and I'm gonna say it's a little bit based on the platinum rule, based on a history with that person, whether they like emails, whether they like texts, whether they want to be off site, whether they want to be in their office, whether they want to be in a you just there's so many different locations, virtually or in the real world, that can impact how a person's going to perceive it. And then there's the message itself that you're communicating. That you got to kind of figure out. And again, this is where I overanalyze and overthink. I'm trying to, you know, put this
And
equation together.
yeah,
So if I'm going to be successful,
is
how do
it
I do that?
because you come off as you're extremely friendly, yet you're also in your role, you're a tough negotiator. Um, so is it is it easy for you to have direct conversations? Is it more difficult? Is it harder or is it just it's kind of it's part of the
Um,
expectations of the job?
One of the hardest things that I do as a negotiator is building a profile of the other side, and part of that is cultural. Um, so here's an example. We had a session one time. We had two sessions for the same client, and one was going to be in Tokyo, and one was going to be in Singapore. And if you guys haven't been there, they're both fantastic cities to go to. Um, and we were setting things up, and there's a lot of international logistics that has to be done. And through the process, the group from Tokyo sent an email copying everybody saying, "We think these dates won't work for us. We might have to pick new ones." And it was overnight. And then the Singapore team came in over the top of that and said, "Yeah, us too." And the partners of Table Force went, "Uh-oh," because, and I don't like to stereotype, but there are cultural uh, patterns of behavior. I'll call them. The Japanese don't like to say no. They don't like to cancel. They would rather you be the person who cancels and you be the one who says no, because it allows them to save face. So we went, okay, what the Japanese are really saying here is this is probably getting canceled. This is probably not going to happen. But Singapore is different culturally. It's a more of a melting pot of Asian culture and Western culture, and we're like they're we don't get the same read from their words that we got from Tokyo. And again, these are all assumptions. And there's that old saying, don't make assumptions because it makes an A double S out of you and me. I say wrong. We should make assumptions, but we should test those assumptions. So we artfully make sure we let the Japanese save face for sure. We went back to them, and we crafted off the top of my head it went something like, "Here's what we heard you say, that the class in Tokyo has been postponed until further notice. Notice I didn't say canceled. Postponed until further notice.
Yeah.
But the Singapore class, we may or may not be looking for new dates, but you can get back to us in a week and let us know for sure." Both sets came back and said, correct. And we are like, oh, whew, we got that right. So I think we have to, kind of make assumptions about people, maybe test them. And then over time, you start to get to know people's patterns of behavior. Our spouses, obviously, I told the story about my wife, Mark. It didn't have as long a relationship, didn't have as close a relationship, so
Yeah.
he had to tell me directly. When I'm dealing with somebody from the UK, culture, we speak the same language, but we're two countries divided by a common language. UK people, they want to be very polite, and they may be cheeky, but it's always in the spirit of I want to be likable, and I don't want to have a direct conversation or a conflict. And when we negotiate with somebody from the UK, we take that into account. We're like, what are they really saying here, and are they just not saying no because they don't want us to, have a negative perception of them, versus somebody from the Netherlands. I love to negotiate with people from the Netherlands because they just tell you directly, no, that won't work. Like
Yeah,
they
that's
don't
it's
even try
that
to
is like
hide it.
a easy no. Yeah.
Yeah, and I go, oh, thank you. Now I know bad news early is good news. Now I know what won't work, so now I can focus on what does work, and we're efficient. There's that German efficiency that goes on. People from Germany are the same way. They're very direct, but I see that as a good thing. Sometimes the Brits don't see that as a good thing. So, as we work in this flat, world that we all live in, we have to take these cultural differences into mind, and personal differences within those cultures into mind, and build out this profile of how am I going to be successful working with the person on the other side of this Zoom call, the other side of this table, buyer seller relationships, internal relationships. I try
Yeah.
to use that quadrant and be agnostic, and be able to work with different people. But I actually have to put effort into that. I have to think about the interactions. Did that answer the question?
No, no, it does. I mean, there's a lot of analytics. It's not something you just go and do always. It's you're thinking through to make it the most efficient or make sure it flows the way you're looking for it to.
Sure.
Um, and then just a couple last questions. So, you've managed a lot of people. So how do you motivate those who are good at what their job is, right? Like good is the entry ticket now. You have to be really good. You can't just be average. You have to be really good at your job. Um,
Okay.
to great.
So one of the guys I work with, Frank Sheridan. Frank's VP of purchasing over at Boyd Gaming in Vegas, and Frank is also very analytical. He used to be over systems at MGM. Um, And Frank had a methodology. He wanted to take his C's and make them B's, and he wanted to take his B's and make them A's, and he wanted to take his A's and get them promoted. But he very quickly decided, like, you if you were a C, it was tough to get out of the C bucket. Frank wanted you to
Mhm.
get out of the C bucket, but you had to earn your way out of the C bucket. So he judged people based on their work product and how they interacted with him and things like that, and it's his prerogative. Um, I like to look at people differently. I don't want to say they're all A, B's, and C's. I know you could grade them that way. Um, I like to look at people and put them in a if they're a C, maybe they're not in the right place. Maybe they're an A in a different job, in a different function, doing different work, during different work hours. Some people could be a C because they're not morning people and they want to be there. Oh, the boss is a morning person, so I better go in. So they're a C the first 3 hours of the day simply because they don't want to wake up that early. And
Yeah.
maybe they're an A from 6 to 9 at night. So I try to consider that when I'm working with teammates. Um, I remember one specific one. I don't have a lot of teammates now. We're all individual contributors. We choose to work together, but we all have our own lines of business that we run. But at MGM, I had a very diverse team, and I had this lady named Debbie Morton, and Debbie's one of the best negotiators I've ever worked with, bar none. Debbie is tough as they come. Chicago native, Midwest, and and Debbie is technically competent in negotiation. She can win every deal point of a 68-page agreement. I've seen her do it. Um, Now there's some downside to that. Sometimes those agreements would take 3 months to negotiate instead of 3 weeks or 3 days. But Debbie's tough, and and I didn't have to manage Debbie at all because she was a workaholic too. She could prioritize her day, and she would work from the she was one of the first people in the office, worked till one of the last people there. That's not always healthy, by the way, but I didn't have to manage her. I knew quality work was going to get done. Now, I had a different teammate, Andrew's his name, and Andrew's really good at what he does too. Now Andrew's a little more like me, personality wise. He'll take some risks. He's had some failures, but he's had a lot of successes too. Um, and uh, and to get Andrew to join the team, he was divorced at the time, and he had a son he had to pick up from school. And he said, "Mike, I can't move from Phoenix to Vegas. This isn't going to work." And I said, "I'll tell you what. If I can let you come in at noon on Monday and leave at noon on Friday, would that make your weekends with your son doable? Would you be interested?" And he said, "Now you're talking." And I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll adjust your work week." Now this is before COVID. This is a lot more
Yeah.
stodgy corporate environments. I said, "I'll adjust your work week, but here's what I need in return. When I have some crazy harebrained idea after hours, on the weekends, um, will you be my person to bounce those ideas off of?" And he said, "Yeah, no problem at all." Because remember, when he's in Vegas, his son's in Phoenix. He's just sitting around his apartment as a single person. I'm
Absolutely.
sure he went out and
Yeah.
stuff like that, but he had some time. So fast forward, we're a year into this working relationship with this eclectic bunch, and Debbie comes in my office and she says, "I don't like what we've got going on here." And I said, What do you got going on here?" She goes, "You like Andrew more than me." And I said, "What?" I said, "No, I don't do that. In fact, I just put Debbie up for manager of the year." like, I'm like, "Debbie, I put you up for this is a 50,000 person corporation. I'm backing you for manager of the year. What do you mean I don't like you?" Because, well, you talk to him a lot more. You guys talk at night, after hours, on weekends. And I said, "Yeah, Debbie, I want to tell you where I'm coming from. You work so hard from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. I don't want to bother you. I I I want to let you go. In fact, I want you to go earlier. I can't make you leave because I know you're tough and you think you need to be here, but I don't want to bother you after hours." Andrew is different. We negotiated that deal on the front end. So I treat him differently and I treat you differently. I try to always have ethics and always have policy as things I'm going to follow. But then each person deserves that platinum rule we talked about, deserves to be treated a little bit different. So what I found out about Debbie was she was feeling a little neglected, that I wasn't involving her in my harebrained schemes. So then I started getting her more involved, and she told me, "Stop it."
Right. Well, because it's miscommunication, which is 90% of the time what the issue is that she didn't understand.
Yeah, she thought I liked him, and that's why I was after hours with him. And reality was that was I was holding him accountable. I needed somebody to talk things through.
Well, right, because he didn't have to start until noon on
Yeah,
Monday, and then he went
exactly, and
noon
he's got some
till
plane time, and
Friday. He has some time. It's a different contract, or employment contract. So,
right.
and percept
So
that's
so
the
here's what we did.
yeah,
I started
yeah.
having lunches with Debbie once a week that we could sit down over a lunch, talk about what's going on in her world, and what it came out with. I think she just wanted I trusted her so much to just get things done. She just wanted to let it out sometimes. And she couldn't do that in front of her internal customers, and she didn't want to do it with her suppliers. And I was her boss. I was kind of like the sounding board that she needed. She just needed to vent sometimes. And I found that out.
Yeah, no, that's
So, yeah.
awesome. That's all right. Well, I know I want to be mindful of your time. I'll ask you two
Well, and
last questions.
I have an extra block here. I do have a hard stop in about 45 minutes, but
Okay.
I'm
Oh,
here.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good. 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 Okay. So I'm going to ask you a
I
couple
love
more
helping
questions.
people. If that hasn't come across,
I
shame
know
on
it
me.
does. And um, okay. So we might have covered it a little bit, but what's one piece of advice that you would tell your younger self?
Um, I just put out a poll this morning on 50-year-old me wants to hire 30-year-old me. 20-year-old me was really energetic and just a go-getter, but I needed to be molded. I was moldable, but I needed a lot of molding earlier in my life. So I think I would tell 20-year-old me, start of the career. Um, some things that worked were I had good mentors. It doesn't mean I always agreed with them, but I had a senior person, same level at General Motors. I had another buyer who same title, but they had 15 years in. Cindy Bell was her name, and Cindy just kind of took me under her wing and gave me some coaching on how General Motors worked and how life worked. And Cindy and I are still friends to this day. I've had different mentors throughout my career. So,
You're lucky. You're very lucky to have had that. Not everyone does.
well, they say we should all seek that out, and progressive companies are actively hiring coaches. You know, a coach and a mentor, I think, is a little bit different situation. I think everybody on the planet can have a mentor, and it doesn't have to be a real world mentor. It's who you follow on LinkedIn, who you follow on Instagram, who you follow on Twitter. It doesn't matter.
That's a
Find
good point.
somebody you
Yeah.
respect and then tune in. Listen now
That's
again.
an excellent a point because there's a few people that I follow on LinkedIn, and whether it could be just a message, it could be a story, it could be a quick 2-minute video. Sometimes that changes the outcome of my day because it
There
really
you go.
was great advice and I needed to hear it.
And you don't have to listen to it. And by the way, you don't have to, 2 minutes. A lot of these reads are 2 minutes. Videos,
Right.
everything is so condensed in this world. We don't really have time to get deep. But that's okay. 2 minutes with somebody is better than zero. 20 minutes with somebody is better than two. Find out what you can. Whatever your public mode of transportation is, whether you're on a bus, whether you're on a train, whether you're in a car, don't be reading while you're driving, but find a way to consume content in a safe way that can help you with your career. I know there's a lot of mindless stuff out there, and I know we all need to detach from our jobs and be entertained, but there's some good entertaining business lessons if we're just willing to listen to them.
Absolutely. You're taking a walk, you're going for a run, you could listen to this podcast,
There you go.
It's always be learning.
Yeah, I consider myself a lifelong learner. I'm on our I'm finding out which plugins to use on our website right now in WordPress, and my boss is like, "You're out of your mind. We pay somebody to do that." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, but I want to know what they're doing. I want to have a tech talk with them, and I know they're way up here and I'm way down here on the pay grade of tech talks, but I want to understand what we're doing, because
Well,
I love to
yeah,
learn stuff.
because that's the only way you can keep fresh with all the different audiences. And I don't know, your kids are a little bit older than my daughter, but I learn something from her school all the time. The way they communicate, some of the exercises, the homework that they have her do, it fuels and gives me ideas.
I
Um,
would see my friends lose it on this new math thing.
well, that's
Back in
tough.
my
That's
day, we just drive
back
down
in
the
my
street. I
day.
go, yeah, yeah, but it's just a different way of looking at numbers in the relationship. So I learned new math, and it was
That
hard.
that
But
was
but I
that was
what I
a fun
learned
challenge.
was you still get to the answer. 2 plus 2 still equals 4. It just depends on how you arrange it. 5 plus 4 is 9, and 10 minus 1 is 9. It keeps me sharp anyway. Or at least I feel like I'm sharp.
Okay, so have you ever heard of um it's called the pie model? Have you heard of that?
No, no.
Okay,
Teach me something.
I'm going to teach you. So, if you can Google it after the fact, but it's talks about um in someone's career and there's things that there's things that are important, right? There's your performance and there's your image and there's exposure to senior leaders or the senior leaders within the organization.
Yeah.
So performance, are you, able to deliver results? Um, Exposure, visibility to leadership. Um, People at the organization know you. Maybe you're mentoring others, and then image, just you're consistent. We've talked about that before. Your reputation, your presence. So if you had to say what percent, if that all equaled up to 100, performance, image, and exposure, what would you think each section was?
All right, I want to be thoughtful here, and I'm
I
going to
know
take a
I'm
little
putting you on
side
the
door on the
spot.
front end. No, that's okay. Because you're going to get raw off the
Yeah,
top of my
I'm just
head.
curious. I'm just curious.
So, so I'm going to say it's a little bit situational because some companies, some cultures are intensely political,
Yeah.
and in those, exposure is going to be a lot more important. At MGM, um, I I wasn't going to go to a meeting. We were going to outsource the entire IT department. Debbie was leading the negotiation with the outsourced company. Our CEO and COO and CFO were going to be there, and I had other stuff that I was working on, and it wasn't more important than that, but Debbie had it, and I knew that.
Yep.
And so Mark walks into my office and he says, "So you're going over the meeting this afternoon?" I said, "No." He goes, "What do you mean no?" He said, Jim Murren's going to be there. Corey Sanders is going to be there. What do you mean you're not going? I said, "No, I'm not going. I got another meeting to go to. Debbie's got it." And he said, do you realize the firepower that's going to be in that room?" I said, "Yeah. I got a million things going on. I'm going to go to this other meeting." He's like, "That's on you." Now, Mark had been there 20 years. So Mark was probably trying to give me some feedback without saying, "Dude, you're making a huge mistake here." Mark was trying to coach me, and I like to be coachable, but I'm not always as coachable as I should be. And I just had my mind made up that I was going to go to this other meeting, and Debbie had the ball. I wanted to get Debbie her exposure. And by the way, she did end up getting promoted to executive director. Uh, and I won't say it's directly applicable to that meeting, but I wasn't afraid to let Debbie take some limelight because if I was there, there's a risk that I'm going to cowboy something and jump in. And if it hasn't come across, I'm pretty confident. I would have jumped in and done the wrong thing or taken some of her spotlight, and that wasn't fair to her. So in that environment, I would say I'm sorry, what was it? It was performance,
So it was
um,
performance, exposure, and your
exposure.
image.
So exposure would have been a bigger part of the pie, maybe 45% of the pie. Now, don't hear something I'm not saying. Performance was also critical because if you screwed something up and you weren't well connected, you were fired. Like like it was a cutthroat environment in that particular situation, or at least you were limited in your career. So I would say the ability to perform and the exposure were maybe 80-90% of that pie. And what was I'm getting to be that age. What was the third
Image.
thing?
Image.
Image. Um I shoot.
It's
I
a
don't want to say thirds, but I was told several times that I didn't fit in at MGM, and I took great offense to that. Actually, goes back to that quadrant thing. I'm like, I can fit in with lots of people. I've worked in Six Sigma shops. I've worked in startup operations. I've worked in tech. I've worked in multiple different industries. What do you mean I don't fit in? And I was wearing a suit every day. Everyone wore a suit and a tie. I wore a suit and a tie every day, and even it's 115 degrees. We're wearing suit and ties, and I'm not now because I'm in my home studio, and finally on my way toward the end of my career there, I uh, I realized why I didn't fit in. And it wasn't for the way I looked. It was for a lot of personality things. A lot of I'm not going to go into all the details, but I
Yeah.
actually started to wear it as a badge of pride that you know what? And I said to the person, they were sitting in my office. The guy's name is Ryan Schnall. I hope he see this one day. He said, "Mike, you don't fit in." And I said, "You're right." and he looked at me, and Ryan knew me well enough at that time. He knew that I could really cowboy some stuff and be kind of out there and be kind of vocal. And he goes, Mike, he goes, hold on, simmer down a little bit. And I go, no, no, I'm cool with it. I'm happy that I don't fit in with the people that you're talking about. And he just kind of looked at me with a suspicious look, like he was going to be monitoring me to make sure that I didn't go too crazy on this. But but I didn't fit in, and that's probably why my career was limited, was capped there, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Round pegs and round holes. I love what I do now. I fit in really well here, and life is really good when you fit in well and you're doing what you love to do, and you're compensated well for it. You know, there's those multiple different Venn diagrams. Um, Here's some coaching for young Mike. You know, they people used to say, find what you love and everything will take care of itself. And young Mike, the voice in my head would say, that's a bunch of BS because I got bills to pay. I got a career to get to. That's find
Yeah.
love what you do. I got to go to work. And then when I got into purchasing, I turned out I thought I loved purchasing and I was really good at it. And I had a really good career in purchasing. But it turns out I only liked it. I'd fooled myself. I
Yeah.
love what I do. And man, the world is so easy. Everything in the world. I'm not saying every day is easy, but in general, when you find what you love to do and you're competent at it and people will pay you to do it, the life is so good. So that's what I would coach young people is really genuinely find that thing you love. And even if you have to take a step back in your career, you know, I went from being a pretty well regarded executive in purchasing to being a trainer, no direct reports. I had 130 people one time reporting to me. I
Oh.
have zero now. And I actually had somebody say that to me. This is some direct feedback. They said, you used to have a lot of people reporting to you. How's the ego? And I
Right?
said, you know what? I'm good with it because here's why. There was never a time in my professional career, except for Boss's Day, which made up holiday,
Then you got a lot of presents.
no one ever came into my office and said, Mike, by the way, you made a great decision. We thought you were crazy, but it turns out you were right. And I am so in love with my job and I get paid so much more than I deserve. Never did that happen in my career. But regularly, I don't like what so and so is doing. Do you know what so and so did? And I don't have those problems now. So life is
Yeah,
different, right?
it
It's an
is
honor and a
different.
privilege to be the leader of a big team, but life is really good when you have a fewer. I'd rather be how did somebody say it one time? Lloyd Parker's the guy's name. He was VP of the call center at America West. I think he had like 1,000 people reporting to him, and he got that job. Previously, he'd been the VP of strategy, and he had like 4 people reporting to him. And somebody said, "Wow, you are the big man on the block. You have more people reporting to you than anybody else at this company." And he said, "Yeah, it's not the same." He said, "I would rather be the captain of the Green Berets than the general of the infantry." No, that was his mindset. That was his career. But I found there's some truth to it. If you can work with a smaller number of people who are really good at what they do and really happy doing it and treat each other really well, whew, it's a powerful team and life is good. So that's another coaching I'd give to younger Mike is find that
No,
situation.
I mean, that is perfect, because I too would have thought when I was younger, "Oh, you don't have to love what you do. You wanna build make a good income and build provide," and,
Yeah, I
um
got money. I got power. Life must be
right?
good.
And so, I think I told you this when we were talking the other day, but, I just watched the movie The Hustle. And it was
Yep.
like a light bulb moment went off because there was this guy who was really, really good at basketball, but he wasn't putting in the effort that someone who loves and is
He
obsessed.
was relying on his natural talent,
Yeah,
which is a wonderful thing. And you
which
can get
is
really
good.
far on
You
natural
can get
talent.
by, but when you love it, not only do you enjoy it, personally, you're usually more successful too because it's a passion.
It's
Absolutely.
yeah, yes, find that passion. And young Mike had that. Volleyball was my passion. And I tell this, I'm a 6 foot guy. There was a lot of people that were much better coached. I didn't pick up volleyball until I was 18, 19, 20. Better coached, um, taller, faster, younger, could jump higher. But at the end of the day, my passion was to find a way to beat them. I might not have been the best at any skill, but if I could put the skills together in a way, if I could outthink them, volleyball is kind of a problem solving sport. You don't get to score points, or you didn't used to score points on the defense to score the points. You had to take the ball away before you could score your points. So it was all about finding a solution to the other team and outlasting them. And if I could do those two things, could be successful. And yeah, I had passion for that back then. I like to play now, but I can't play at the level that I used to play, and nor will I ever, because of I'm aging, and it is what it is. But find a passion for today, for today's you, and embrace it. And yeah, jump in.
No, yeah. So how do you continually get better? I mean, so because we talked about Mike showed up in his 20s in a certain
Yep.
way, and maybe in your 30s you were VP, uh,
Right.
MGM, right? Really successful.
Not a VP at
Can,
MGM. Yeah, VP
sorry,
at IAC, but yeah, but head of supply chain. They had
head of
different title
supply chain.
systems, but sure.
Sorry. And but you continue to iterate. So what's the element, or what's the word I'm thinking of? What makes you continuously evolve and change?
That's a great question. If I really have to analyze myself, I it goes back to, I
Like,
don't want to make the same mistake twice, and I definitely don't want to make the same mistakes that other people have made. why would I
yeah,
do that if it's proven? Don't do the same thing and expect a different result. Sure, there's exceptions that to that rule, but in general, if something doesn't work, stop doing it. Um, so yeah, I want to be the best me that I can be. I want to be a better me tomorrow than I am today, on everything, on a
absolutely.
dad, on a husband, as a trainer. So it's little things. Sometimes I just saw somebody on LinkedIn post a tip the other day,
Yeah.
little snippet. It was less than 30 seconds, and they said, what I learned was, I used to ask people, um, what questions do you have, and I would hardly get any. And then I started asking people, do you have any questions? And I got a couple more. But when I started saying, ask me two questions,
That's good.
I started getting much more than two, to putting the onus, an objective metric, two questions, ask me two questions. And I'm going to use that tip in the trainings that I do. It's little things to continuous evolve. One thing I learned from Bill, and you've heard me say on this podcast, did that answer your question? You answer a question and then go back to the person and say, did that answer your question? Because communication is not what
Hmm.
I say, it's what you hear. And I may think, oh, I'm brilliant. Oh, that was the perfect solution. But if the other person has a different background, a different bias, a different cultural upbringing, whatever it may be, they may be like, you're out of your mind, dude. That didn't answer it at all. But I've got 12 stories that I could tell. Maybe I picked the wrong one. So just looping that feedback loop, talking about feedback,
Yeah,
did that answer your question? Um, helps me to be better connected with an audience, be it one person or be it 20. But you have to learn these things. You have to look for other really successful people. And while I say don't make the same mistake others and stop doing stuff that doesn't work, we should start doing stuff that does work. Now, if it doesn't work for me when I start doing it, I'll say, okay, well, that didn't work for Mike. I might pass it along to somebody else. But if it doesn't work for me the first two, three, four times, I'll probably stop using it.
you pivot.
But I'm on the lookout. Yeah, pivot, great word. I'm on the lookout for little tips. What I tell people is this: life is simple, but it's not easy. Most of the things people do in life that separate them are simple. There is an admiral, I believe, he was a Navy SEAL, or over the Navy SEALs. I don't know his exact background. I haven't read the whole book, but there's a video out there about making your bed. Simple to do, not always easy,
Not
but the
always.
simple act of waking up, making your bed, you mentally check a box. I have accomplished something. Now you're on a momentum play. What's the next thing I can accomplish? Can I unload the dishwasher? Got it. Now I can unload the dishwasher. Can I write that report for my boss? Okay, but you've got two things that say I accomplished something, and now the third becomes easier. I'm not asking anybody to go get a degree in rocket science or brain surgery or anything like that. What I'm saying is, can you do the little simple things that can start to separate yourself from your coworkers. You've probably heard me tell the story of the two hunters and the bear, where the two hunters are getting ready to go hunt bear, and one they get to the forest edge, and one says, "Oh, hold on a second, I gotta go back to the truck." And they go back to the truck, and the hunters, they're friends at the forest edge, and they're watching them, and they go, "Hey, what are you doing over there?" And they go, "Oh, I got to take off my boots and I got to put on my tennis shoes." And the hunter at the forest edge says, "Listen, I don't know if you know this, but bears are really fast. You can't outrun the bear." And the hunter putting on the tennis shoes says, "Oh, I know I can't outrun the bear. I just need to outrun you. Can, can we can you outrun yourself? Can you be a better you tomorrow than you are today? Is one thing you've heard me say countless times. But
Absolutely.
so going back to the layoff thing, there's always, even on the high performing teams, there is always a bottom person on a Navy SEAL team.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
There's one who doesn't shoot as well, who doesn't get their marksman, who can't do the field meds. There's always who was a little bit slower running the mile. Got it. If there's six and you have to cut one, there's going to be five. Can you make sure you're not in the bottom 10% of your company? Look around. Be better than the person on the left and the right, and you'll have a better career.
yeah, that's great advice.
And I'm
'Cause
don't hear something I'm not saying.
no, I'm just saying, I mean, there's
No, not
always
you, but the people out there. I am not saying push people down. That's the
no, not push
farthest
people
thing from what I'm
down,
saying.
but I mean, I think you constantly I didn't take that I took it as you constantly need to evaluate yourself. How am I showing up today? Okay. How do I wanna show up tomorrow? And what's the catalyst or what's
Sure.
the items that I need to do or the actions I need to do to get to where I wanna be tomorrow? It's just like you
So
talked about
so to
continuous
help the people
improvement.
who have career aspirations, and
Yes.
I've talked a couple times about the voice in our head, how strong it is, and it'll talk us out of doing things. So I want to talk about one specific situation that I think can help people with their career. So I'd taken over a position. It was my first VP role, and there was a job that had been open about 3 or 4 months, and no one had filled it, and there were buyer level people that would have been a natural career progression to go into this management role, and there was just been a reorg about a year before I got there, so there was some upheaval, and different people were doing different jobs, and I said, "Why is this job still open?" And they said, "Well, it's a hard job to fill." And I said, "Have anybody here applied for it?" And the answer I got was one of the senior people, a confident, accomplished person, said to me, "Well, if they would have wanted us for that job, they would have given us that job." And I think that's a very valid, let me put it this way. Intellectually, I understand exactly what she meant. But let me tell you, as the hiring manager, heard none of us are qualified for that job because we won't step up and say, "Hey, here's my resume.
You gotta
I
show
want to
interest.
interview for that job." They had to show interest, and they had to show me, they had the confidence. This was going to be like a job managing $100 million in supply chain. This is a fairly big job. I needed somebody who was confident, who said, "Let me have that project. I want to take that on." So the fact that they didn't step up, and I'll tell you a second story about that,
Yeah.
is fine. Um, Bad news early is good news. They weren't the right person for that role, and they didn't get the job. I think there's a lot of people who sit out there and they wait to be promoted. Now, I'm not asking you to be rude or arrogant to your boss or demanding to your boss. What I'm saying is you can go to your boss and say, "Hey, listen, I'm happy with what I'm doing now. I really like it here. I have career aspirations to be here long term. Um, what do I need to do to get the next promotion that opens up? How do I position myself? Coach me. I am coachable." Ooh. Now you're asking your
Huge.
boss.
Yeah.
You're telling your boss, "I want you to help me. How do I do it?" Right? You're giving them respect. You're asking to be coached by them. You're feeding that ego. You're feeding into that. We all have an ego. So I think that's a really powerful conversation you can have with your boss. So the other side of that story, I was working really, really hard, and I was really, really, really career driven. And I talked to a mentor of mine, and I said, "This is just not working out. I got people, I come in at 7 o'clock, and sometimes I don't leave till 7 o'clock, and I do emails at home, and I'm trying to lead by example. And some of these people just aren't getting with the program." And my boss stopped me. Ron Milton's guy's name. I'm ex-boss, mentor. He said, "How dare you?" And he said, "Excuse me?" I said, "I'm leading by example here. You know, that's what we do, right?" And he goes, "No, how dare you assume that everybody's got the same career aspirations that you have?" You know, and he used hockey as an example. I was in Detroit. He said, "You know, on a hockey team, there's a superstar or two, and then there's a goalie, and then there's defensemen, and then there's guys who stand in front of the net and will try to deflect a puck that's been shot 120 miles an hour, and their whole job, it might hit them in the face, but they're trying to deflect it. And there's guys who go in the corners and they're the grinders and they get the puck out of the corner. You got to find out what everybody on your team wants to be and then help them be that. And then you will have a high functioning team." And he was right. And I had a meeting with my team. You know, it hit me an epiphany. So I had the meeting and I just used that same description. And I said, "Here's what I want. I'm not going to hold it against you, but if you want to be a grinder, I want you to tell me, because I will give you jobs that are perfect for people who are grinders. If you want to be a director one day, I want you to tell me, because now I'm going to find projects that get you that visibility, and they're going to be big juicy projects, right? But you might have to work, you know, a longer
Longer
day."
hours.
And
Yeah.
who just want to work for benefits. Maybe their spouse or maybe they've got inheritance income, and they just want to be productive members of society, but they want to punch in at 8 and they want to leave at 5 and they want to take their hour lunch. Put those people in jobs that an 8 to 5 hour lunch person can do and be successful, and then put the other people in jobs that they can do and be successful. And that goes back to the A, B, and C model. You take the C's, maybe they'd be B's in a different job, but help people find that platinum rule, leaping back to that. And that was a really high performing team. But that was a management lesson for me, that I had to listen to a mentor tell me how to get there. Because I thought I knew the way. Younger Mike thought he knew the way. A little more mature Mike learned that there's other people who were pretty successful. And if you're willing to listen and be coached, you'll be more successful. Did that answer your question on that one?
Yeah, no, that was
I kind
that
of unpacked a lot there.
we no, that was good. We hit a lot of different targets. Um, I would say just one last question is anything else that you'd like to share or advice that we didn't touch upon?
Um, you know, no, I feel like you drew a lot of content out of me that would have helped young Mike. And if it can help other people, trials, tribulations, stuff that works, stuff that didn't, um, yeah, I'm not going to try to stretch it. I think you did a fantastic job pulling some impactful advice that impacted me. And hopefully it can help other people. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for helping me relive some of this stuff. In fact, I'll do a video every once in a while because I'll see something on LinkedIn and it'll remind me of a person that I worked with. So I try to drop a video and tell that life lesson. There's a lesson about Olga and her confidence level.
Yeah, tell me.
Olga's a
I
lady.
love
Confidence. I interviewed Olga, and Olga's. I describe her from the old country, from the Caspian Sea, and do not mention Borat like to Olga.
oh,
Like, but she didn't know English. She went from
my
Moscow.
wife.
She went to New York City.
Do you remember
Part
that? Did you see
Yes, my
Borat?
wife.
My wife.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So so she came to America with, I think she said, $50 in her pocket and didn't know English, and worked her way up. She was the first female chef in Michael Mina's kitchen at the Bellagio. Tough as they come, also stylish and kind. So Olga's interviewing with me, and I asked her a bunch of behavioral based questions. I'd been trained in HR on making sure that, we don't just we don't let people tell us what they want to hear, what we want to hear. We really get to the root of, are they capable or not? And at the end, I said, okay, open ended question. Where do you want to be in 5 years? And without missing a beat, Olga looked at me and she said, I want to be in your chair. And the voice in my head said, damn, you're confident. I love that about you. She wasn't rude or arrogant in saying, I want you fired. But the reality in corporate world is this: you can't get promoted until your boss gets promoted or leaves. So we should all want our bosses to get promoted so there's an open spot for us to go into. And she just looked at me and said, I want to be in your role. And the voice in my head said, I love how confident you are. And you could give Olga any project. First of all, if she already knew how to do it, she'd get it done fast and very well. And if she didn't know how to do it, I just caught up with a guy today that I work with. I said, "Do you work with Olga?" And he goes, "Oh, I love working with Olga because if she doesn't know something, she will research the heck out of it until she becomes an expert." So when I get to, do sessions like this, I get to relive some stuff that impacted me. Most of it's favorable, and I get to remember the other people in my life that I worked with, and that's positive. So I want to thank you for helping me remember all this stuff,
No,
and I
I
might
you
make
know
some
what
phone calls after this.
yeah, you just actually I had a guy come into my office yesterday, and he told me the exact same thing that when he interviewed, um, he said, "I want your job." And the person was hired.
Eh,
But in talking with him, this person, um, wanted more advice and development. And so I gave him an individual development plan because
Okay.
many companies will give you individual development plans as part of the performance process. But sometimes you just have to be proactive as an employee and ask to start for this information or ask for resources. So it made me think of that
You know,
when you mentioned it.
and and now you set off another memory for
So-
for the young people. So I was in the General Motors the leadership development program,
yep.
all the young people who have some level of potential, and they told us in no uncertain terms, you are responsible for your own career. We are not going to find positions for you. And that hit me. I was like, wait a minute, I thought you'd be moving us around. Like like in my mind, I heard the word program and I assumed there was a master plan. And they said there is no
Mhm.
master plan. You figure it out. No, no, I did figure it out. And I wound up with a job at Raytheon, which GM owned at the time. And I told my boss, hey, listen, I found my first manager position. Chris Nagley's my boss's name. And he goes, what do you mean? And I go, yeah, yeah, no, I found a manager position. I'm gonna go take it. And he goes, we have plans for you. And I said, no, no, I sat in the meeting and you guys said that you don't have plans for us. And they said, no, that's everybody else. We have plans for you. I said, but you didn't tell me that. Uh, Back to the platinum rule. They just didn't, or the feedback. I don't know how we're going to
Right.
wrap
They
these
weren't
concepts. He didn't
communicating.
he didn't
what-
communicate that he had a special plan for me. So I had already taken this other job. Uh, You know, anyway, the point is, I think it's
Yes.
very easy to
Sometimes you
go to play
do.
the victim. I didn't get
Sometimes
promoted.
right.
They don't like me.
Sometimes, depending on on your skill and the company, yes, there's just you're going to go through promotions, but you can't just rely on it. So you have to have your own plan as well,
I
and
think
work
that's it.
with your
There are
manager.
companies who have a plan, and there are people who pull. When I would move jobs, I had a toolkit of people, processes, and tools that were successful at other jobs. And on the people side, it was developing people, but it was also I got a Rolodex of really talented people. And as soon as I had a position open, or if I was going to take a role where I was going to be able to hire some people, I alerted the A's that I'd work with, hey, I'm on the move. Come on. But
The Rolodex. Can I make fun of you
yeah.
for the
Yeah, you
Rolodex?
could sorry, the contact app.
The
But the
contact
point is
list
this,
in your phone.
uh, not everybody does that. Some people move, do you have a little bit of time? You have 2 minutes for a
Yeah,
quick
I have
story?
2 more minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so Jeremy Bach, senior vice president at, I think I forget his exact title at MGM. He was over finance and he was over the, supply chain team. And, Jeremy is A, one of the smartest people I've ever worked with, and B, one of the kindest. Um, in fact, I think he's too kind in a lot of ways, but I want to live in the world between his ears because in that world, no one is mean and no one is unscrupulous. If somebody does something that we don't like, it's because we don't know what's on their sheet of paper. No one would intentionally be mean. Now Jeremy's been let down a lot. So Jeremy gets a job with Sands Corp. He's now I think he's their chief marketing officer. His office is in Singapore. And if anybody wants to go to Singapore, it's an amazing place. Marina Bay Sands is outstanding. And so Jeremy calls us all in and he says, hey, listen, I've got some news for everybody. And I just want to let you know that I've accepted a position with Sands. I'm going to be leaving the company. We're on good terms. I'm going to be here for a couple of weeks. We're going to unwind some things really nicely, but I'm moving on. And then he said, and I want you all to know This is no disrespect to any of you, but I don't poach people. And that's his style. That's his personal brand. And
Mhm.
he was very clear in his communication. Now, at the time, there was some angst at MGM. Remember, I told you about you don't fit in here. There were some things going on with me that I didn't appreciate the way MGM was handling the Mike brand, and I may have overstepped my bounds in this, but I stopped him in his going away speech, and I said, Jeremy, can I say something? And he looked at me like, oh, dude, what are you gonna do? And I said, I just want to let you all know that if I can't resolve my situation here, I'm poaching all you guys because I'm a mercenary, and wherever I am, I want the best people possible. And Jeremy looked at me like, dude, you couldn't just let me sail off into the sunset. Like, why is this your meeting now and not my meeting? And then I was quiet after that. But there are different styles. So yeah, no, that doesn't mean that people will move because sometimes people are happy where they are. But
Yeah.
to tie it back to the mentorship, there's going to be mentors who want to pull you, but it's the people that are watching this right now. Everybody is responsible for your own career, finding your way up or sideways or to a different place, or to find the mentor. If you're not a driver, and again, back to that hockey story, not everybody can shoot the puck. If you're not that person, you can at least find a mentor who will bring you along, who will shoot the puck that you dug out of the corner. So, in that case, even though you might not be a driver, find a driver so that you can sit in the passenger seat. That you were responsible for our own
A
careers, I guess is a
ab
better way of saying it.
absolutely. There's always others, that are willing to help, whether you're the leader and you're bringing up, someone up the ranks or, at other levels as well.